In video number 3, Malabika, we would first like to know as to what is your suggestion or recommendations. I am talking about the actual pedagogy, that how should law and economics be taught to the students?
Now, an important consideration in structuring an introductory course, and I am just discussing the introductory course,
yes,
because here we are thinking of introducing law and economics as a first course for students who are otherwise doing
yes,
law.
Here the audience is the law professionals would be.
Absolutely.
And you want to give them a base in economics.
Absolutely.
They are not going to be economists
yes,
in any case.
Yes. And so we assume that whether the students have some familiarity with elementary economics, we need to know that, and how comfortable they are with the use of some school level mathematics, particularly calculus. And now just the term calculus might create fear among students. So we want to clarify this, that it is possible to convey the basic ideas of law and economics and explain some of the important findings of the subject without the use of any mathematics, by the use of examples and heuristic explanations. Now, this approach is best suited for those who are studying law and who wish to know something about law and economics, but do not wish to pursue the subject matter in great detail. Now, we have here some references that would make this possible, that without any prior knowledge about calculus, they can go through the entire findings of law and economics. Now, a standard course in law and economics should cover the following topics among others. First, it should have preliminaries. Now, what are these preliminaries? What preliminaries need to be done will of course depend on the composition of the class. So, it is very important to look at the composition of the class and the level at which the subject matter is going to be taught. One idea that must be taught in all circumstances is that of Nash equilibrium. Now, although the concept of Nash equilibrium is quite straightforward, many students find it quite difficult. So, a clear understanding of this idea is essential for understanding quite a few propositions of the subject. Secondly, an introduction to Coe's theorem. Now, the Coe's theorem provides a baseline for economic analysis of law. The way to state the Coe's theorem is to assert that if transaction costs are 0, then the allocation of resources will be efficient regardless of liability assignments. Now, what does that mean? In other words, when transaction costs are 0, law is irrelevant. Now, it is a very, very strong assertion. Now, what the law does matter for efficiency when the transaction costs are not 0. Thirdly, economic analysis of tort law, economic analysis of contract law, economic analysis of property law. Here, I would like to elaborate a bit on property law. Now, in these 3 modules, apart from discussing the main findings that were mentioned earlier, it would be a good idea to cover some additional topics. Now, what kind of topics? We could cover acquisition of private property by the government, particularly land under eminent domain. It is an extremely important social and political issue in many countries, including India. Some discussion on it under property law module can be done. Finally, one can do an economic analysis of crime and punishment. That would more or less constitute enough material for a standard introductory course on law and economics.
Yes, and this I am sure you would have appreciated that this would be taught in the first 2 years of the 5-year law program. So, that may work out either a 3 or 4 credit course every time. So, thanks for giving that idea, and linked to this is that would you like to flag some introductory textbooks which you think would be useful?
Absolutely. So, as I discussed just now, that you could basically have explain the concepts of the main findings of law and economics without using mathematics. So I would suggest that these are two books. One, the Economic Analysis of Liability Rules. It does have mathematics, but there are some chapters which gives the introduction to the major concepts that are used, the preliminaries, Nash equilibrium, Coase theorem, these kind of things. There is an introduction in this book, The Law in Economics. It's an edited volume by Professor Satish Jain. It does have other articles as well. So these are some of the books that could be used. Apart from that, I have a list here. You could use Cooter and Woolen, which is used, it's a standard textbook called Law in Economics. It has been used all over the world. You could use Friedman's Laws Order, what economics has to do with law and why it matters. I have the book here. The book does not use any mathematics. It's an extremely well written book in a manner that it almost reads like a novel. So anyone wanting to just go through law and economics, even though you may not have it as a course, you could start reading it and understand that. And thirdly, Miscellany, the economic approach to law, it uses mathematics and graph, but it is quite simple and it can be used at that level. We do have Polinsky again with no graph and no mathematics. So it is this book, An Introduction to Law and Economics by Michel Polinsky. And apart from that, we do have Richard Posner's Economic Analysis of Law, which again is used widely and which is basically was the first book on law and economics as such to give more or less cover all kinds of topics. So it is almost like an encyclopedia, but of course it needs to be accompanied by these books in order to understand some of the concepts that is explained in that book.
Thank you. You use the word while talking about the book that it is used all over the world and widely used. Now that brings me to my next question, and that is that course contents of this course on law and economics, these would be based on purely national perspective or they would reflect an international approach. I would be happy to get your response to that.
Well, I would say that definitely as a direct response, definitely international. The reason is that law at its core is more or less, the structure of law is more or less similar everywhere. So if you conceive of it in a broad manner, it is similar. So therefore, as when I was talking about the issue about whether efficiency is an overriding concept in law, we did point out a certain aspects which show that it need not be, right, and also whether the rules that were efficient, like the negligence rule, it need not be efficient if in certain countries or in certain jurisdictions you do use the untaken precaution approach. So in order to show that that law as such is more or less similar everywhere and the way it is dealt, one can look at this book, Economic Analysis of Tort Law, the negligence determination. Just the question of negligence determination, it is the cases are analyzed from 3 countries, Great Britain, United States of America and India, and we find more or less similar problems everywhere. So as far as the broad analysis is concerned, it is true. However, there could be certain specific or minor changes in different countries, and that could be country specific or regional as well. So that needs to be analyzed.
Thank you for clarifying that. And my last question to you, Malabika, is that where do you think that the students of law and economics they can be absorbed or they can find employment apart from academic domain?
In the US, law and economics has progressed quite a lot in the law schools. So therefore, not only in the law schools, even in the judgments. So what we find is that lawyers as such are incorporating the knowledge that they have got in economics in their decisions. So the verdicts also do have it. So apart from academics there, lawyers with a knowledge of economics have employment elsewhere. They get employment object.
In application and practice.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So in India, however, the scope of lawyers knowing law and economics is more or less confined to the domain of academics so far. However, with the introduction of law and economics in different law schools in India, we do see a similar kind of trend coming in India as well.
Yes, I think it makes sense, and even for the lawmakers, whether it is parliamentarians or those from the executive, perhaps sound understanding the basics of law and economics would be useful. Thank you very much, Malabika ji. Your presentation has been very beneficial, and I am sure that the future faculty for this course would gain from your articulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.